Up?
Hey, how are you, man?
I'm doing well. How are you? Where are you these days?
I'm back home. So I
Nice.
was, it was, yeah, been a busy week. I was at um, Exeter till yesterday. Sean
Yep.
was running a camp at Exeter, and then I'm headed to Brown tomorrow for, the next step prep showcase
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah,
Alden
yeah.
runs. So
Nice.
I'll be there yesterday. How about you after the development camp? Where were you?
What did I do? Oh, I was down at Westminster at my brother's. We had a member guest, which was fun. Jonkus was
Nice.
there. It was a good time. We finished right where we needed to, like right in the middle of the pack, didn't embarrass ourselves, but didn't accomplish anything.
That's great. That's great.
So
How's your
it was
brother's
fun.
golf game these days?
It's good. It's good. He's getting there. He's all right.
Yeah. Timmy Jonkis is a pretty good golfer.
He's a good. We didn't get to play with him, but he's supposed to be a really good golfer. He then went to play. He went to play Shinnecock after, I think. With he had like a camp down there with an alum on Long Island that he headed to. So he
Nice.
had a big golf weekend.
That's great. All right, we'll just get right into it. So,
Yeah, yeah.
so what year is this for you now back at St. Paul's? Like how
So
many?
this is year. So this will be going into year four.
Right.
Um, so I did 2 years as the assistant coach and then took over last year. So it'll be my second year as the head coach, but fourth year back since I graduated back in
Yeah.
2009. So it's like stint number two.
Yeah. So yeah, I think you're, I don't know, I'm trying to think now of the coaches I've talked to, maybe like two or three who, yeah, isn't just like you, right? An alum of the school that
Yeah.
they ended up back at. But for you, a little different path, right? Because you were at, how long were you at Trinity Pauling for?
I was there, I think 7 years because
Yep.
I think this was my like 10th year coaching. So I think 7 years. And that was great. It was like an awesome place to start and um, totally different
Right.
than my experience here. Like the all boys thing, I had no idea what single sex education was. And I tell people, it probably sounds weird when I was talking to a family the other day, and my biggest piece of advice for anyone who's like kind of looking into the prep school world, whether you've had brothers and sisters go through the process before or you're brand new and you have no idea what's going on. My biggest piece of advice is like you've got to go check out at least one single sex school just because it like for the right kid and the right family, it's the best thing you could do. And that was one of the things I'm grateful for of like having learned at Trinity Pauling is like it for the boys who ended up at Trinity Pong, it was probably the best place they could be at that moment in time. And then, like for me, I know it wouldn't have worked out. So like
Right.
the co-ed model was what I needed, um, kind of to push me. But it was incredible. I got to work with Bob Farrs. He and I started at the same time, and he's been such a great mentor. I was really lucky. I got to coach his son for the last 3 years, so he came over from Trinity Pauling with me when I came to St. Paul's, and they do such a good job there. And but they're totally, as you know, like there's so many
Totally different.
different versions, and we're like totally different here. So
Yeah, I tell people all the same thing about like, look, I think if you should go visit a single sex school and you're going to know right away, like it's either
right,
going to be the
right,
right thing for you or not. And like, I look at my own kids, my daughter who's at an all girls school, like for her,
yeah,
100% what she wanted. For my son, we looked
right,
and he was like, absolutely not.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then, so yeah, so then when you got to St. Paul's, you got to coach well, you're still coaching with, but like were the assistant to Danny Murphy for
Yeah,
2 years.
yeah,
Like and I love Danny. And by the time
yeah,
I'm trying to think, right, because by the time you got to St. Paul's, Danny would have been how many years now as a head coach? Like 20 some odd years, right?
So yeah, 20 something years. Because we did like the senior night of his last year as the head coach, I sent out like a tribute link to like all the NEPs, most of the Founders League coaches and the Lakes Region coaches he'd spent like his whole career coaching against, and I think when I went back, I think he was like, I think he had just eclipsed 30 years,
Yeah.
period. And he was at Avon for a good period of time, but it was like, I think he was like closing in on 25 years as a head coach. So he'd been doing it for a long, long time. And um, I always tell people like he's such a again like you talk about mentors you meet along the way. Like Bob was one style of mentor to me, and Danny's a totally different style, but just as impactful. And he's the kind of person I always have to like remind the kids. I'm like, guys, like history teacher Mr. Murphy was on. He was on like arguably the most famous and arguably the best college hockey team of all time.
Yep.
He's roommates with Jim Montgomery and played with Paul Correa. And I mean, you got if you have like a free moment, you got to go watch the Out of the Woods
I
documentary.
grew
That
up, that
it's
thing, I
incredible.
burned a hole in my VCR as a kid
Yeah,
watching that
it's
game.
incredible. And he's like right there. He looks exactly the same. I think he was a little meaner back then, but no, he's had such. I mean, he's coached. First of all, he's like coached. He coached Quick at Avon. He coached Benino. He coached some of the best players to
Max
come out of New
Pacioretty,
England.
we had
Max
Pacioretty.
Pacioretty, yeah,
Yep.
when he was at Taft, like he coached some of the best teams in New England prep hockey history, I think, and then some of the best players. And so he's just got such and played with great players. So he's got such great hockey knowledge, and he's such an asset, but also just a great resource for me. In that he's like a teacher first, and I think that's the really important distinction between what we do at like the traditional boarding school level relative um, to kind of that like AAA or academy world out there. It's like we're all coming at it from like we're educators first, and yeah, do we want to win in the moment? Are we coaching intensely? Sure, but Danny's just such a great he's just such a great foil to me to like level back my like youthful exuberance and intensity and remind me of like why we're here. And the kids latch right onto him, and he's just been incredible. And I always tell people he's like the only guy I think I could have like coached under for 2 years and then switched. And he's his personality. He's so quiet and reserved that
Yep.
he's like he took that step back and has been incredible as like a supporter instead of being the leader all the time.
He was the guy when so my wife and I, when we were working at a day school and decided we wanted to go into to boarding schools, like
Yeah,
Danny was the first guy I called and went up and spent like a day or 2 days with
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
Aft
yeah.
and yeah, talked to him about it and like yeah, he's just awesome. So yeah, like it is a unique situation for you guys, right? Because you
Right.
essentially swapped roles.
Yeah,
Um, and you would have had some number, I don't know what it was, right? But some number of guys who overlapped, right, in that
yeah, yeah,
transition and maybe still do. So yeah, talk a little bit about how that went even for you or
yeah.
for the kids or what was that like?
Yeah, I think I mean, anytime and I went through it as a kid here, like Tim Pratt,
Oh,
who
right.
was my boss for a long time or for 2 years in college advising here. He was a long time hockey coach here. And so trying to think, my junior year, we went to the finals against Avon, lost in overtime. And then like 2 days later, he sent an email out and he was going on sabbatical. And Mark Bozek took over for a year as like the interim head coach. So I went through it as a player, and it's like I think the hardest thing, certainly there's the like at this in this world, there's a lot more contact on the way in and there with coaches than there was um, back then. Back then we kind of all just showed up and
For sure.
it was, whoever was there was there. So I think part of it is always that like as an assistant coach, there's definitely a more familiar dynamic, and I had to kind of like navigate that as a player. So I felt relatively comfortable figuring out how to navigate that like on the other side of things. But then there's always the certainly the feeling from players and families of like that when anytime there's a head coaching change, whether that person's been there or not, like
Right.
there was one kind of understanding on the way in, and then on your way out, maybe there's a little bit of a different understanding. It was really helpful to have Danny there, um, because he'd had those really close relationships with the families on the way in. Um, and I think that as I like reflect back on year one, I think that's the part that it's not. I'm sure you talk to your families about it. It's not the like it's not recruiting like we feel like in college recruiting, right? It's
Right.
building these relationships with these families so that they feel comfortable sending their son to live away from home at like 14 or 15 years old. Um, and the big shift between me and Danny taking over has literally just been like now I'm at the forefront trying to build those relationships and he's supporting when they get here. So I think the thing I noticed right away was it wasn't like this tension of like, oh, Coach Murphy promised me all this playing time. Like that doesn't happen, right?
Right.
It was the like Coach Murphy was the one that they came to play for and had these prior relationships with before they even stepped foot on St. Paul's campus. So it was just kind of navigating that and having him in the I think having him in the locker room was a huge help because those kids had that it wasn't like he like vanished into thin air. So there were challenges with it, but I think it went really well year one.
And you're right. I think because the process is so different, and I tell all my families this, right? Like for
Yeah.
lots of reasons, this is not college, but the primary one being like college is dealing with adults. Like
Right.
we're
Right.
dealing with adolescents here.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I would imagine like I think about it from not only what I do, but with my own kids. Like in some ways, we'll talk more about this, right? Like your relationship with that you build with kids is one thing, but the parents are the ones who've entrusted you with their
Exactly.
kid. And so now all of a sudden it's, well, this is the guy who I talked to about taking care of my child. And I didn't
Right.
know this guy as well. And
Yeah.
so that part of the transition is almost probably, yeah, more of the management end of just making sure that parents are, yeah. And you know this too. I think you guys do an especially good job of this, and we'll talk a little bit about it, but like you're getting families who are choosing to come to St. Paul's for the whole experience, right? And,
Right.
and hockey is a piece of it. And so ultimately for them, it is probably not to say that the playing time and where's my son going to get to play
Yeah.
after this
Yeah.
doesn't matter, but it is really around like what are all of those pieces of this is the person I was expecting to have this relationship with.
Totally. Totally. And I think like it would I think when you look at like how coaching trend, and you're starting to see it in like college hockey now, where there's these like coaches in waiting, and that's kind of how we did it.
Yep.
Like we announced that I was going to take over in October of Danny's last year as the head coach. So you're just trying to like because there's so many people involved in this, like you were just referencing. I think it's as long as you do it that way, I think you can get through it. And having him there, like I said a couple times, like having him boots on the ground with me in it day to day, that's really helpful because like when we get to, whether it's talking about junior hockey and college hockey with the seniors that he brought in, like he's able to be part of those conversations still. It's not like he's off at some other school and I'm trying to, navigate my way around the family for the first time. So I think we handled it as well as you could ask. Like there's bumps along the road like anything, but um I think the most important thing that I was just trying to convey to people is like you're coming here to develop as a human being for like in a really holistic sense. And as long as we keep a great eye on that St. Paul's always done it in, from the residential side of things to the classroom side of things. And we're just trying to take the same thing and like do it on the hockey rink. Like it's not rocket science, but it's worked in those other two areas. So there's no reason it shouldn't work in the hockey world too.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot that's so unique about St. Paul's, but one of them talking about the admission side that comes up, I think and over the last 6 months when I've been talking to coaches, right? Like I think this big push that's the trend anyways that a lot of people are
Hmm.
seeing is this idea of like, well, prep hockey is probably getting a little bit younger, right? Like players
Hmm.
want to come in
Yeah.
and reclassifying. But for you guys, one of the things I talk to families a lot about, not just with you, but obviously schools in your league, right, is it's kind of always you guys have always been that way in part because like you don't have postgraduates, right? And
Right.
like
Right. Yeah.
and also with the admission standards that you guys have there, right? Like the largest entry point is going to be in ninth grade, trying to get,
Yes.
as we've talked about, like it's going to be really challenging to be admitted as an 11th grader. And so for
Yeah.
you guys, I think it's always like you've always had this group that maybe has been together a little bit longer than what you see
Yeah.
at some other schools.
Yeah. I look at it like from a coaching side. I think it's a huge advantage for two reasons. One, I think like the team culture piece is it mimics what you're going to see in at the college level, where all of our guys aren't here for 4 years, sure, but the bulk of our guys are going to be here for 3 years. Like that's from
Right.
like a hockey perspective. That's kind of when most of our guys come in, is in that repeat 10 year. And then we'll add a couple 11th graders along the way. But as you and I know from chatting about kids along the way, like that just is. I think there's years where we admit in a 150-person graduating class, like we might admit maybe 10 or 15 boys and girls total into that 11th
Right.
grade pool. So it just from a sheer numbers perspective, it gets really competitive and it forces our hands, like I said, in a good way to go younger. So you've got the like our captain this year. As I look at our leadership group, like our captain and our three assistant captains, our captain's going to be a 4 year guy. He was an assistant captain last year, going to be a 4 year guy. One of our assistant captains is also a 4 year guy, and then the other two are 3 year guys.
Yeah.
So, so from like a just like again back to that idea of mentorship, like mentoring the younger kids, like these guys have literally walked in their shoes for several years now. It's not like, oh, I showed up last year and now all of a sudden I'm like big dog on campus. So it
Right.
I really like it from the team culture aspect of it. And then the other advantage I think is as prep school hockey gets younger, I'm totally on board. I think you and I have chatted about this before. Like you have the CHL out there. Like I think the CHL is going to get older, so all of a sudden you're going to have a bunch of 16-year-olds that used to play in the CHL that now need a home. They don't.
Yep.
I'm already seeing it. Like a bunch
Yeah.
of kids this summer, um, OHL and Quebec Major Junior League draft picks that know they're not going to make the team. They don't want to stay up there for 16th and they're trying to come down to the state. So I think you're going to see a lot of that migration start to happen. And it's just going to, and they don't want to repeat though, because they know when they're 18, they're going to make the team.
Right. They
So
want to
you,
keep as many options open on the back end
right.
as possible.
Um, so it's good. I think a lot of places are going to mimic what we've been able to do. And it's like, hey, you're a high end kid at 14, 15 coming in. Like you're going to have an I'm never going to be a coach that sits there and guarantees you that you're going to be our third line center or our second line winger and run our first power play as a defenseman. But, but what I do feel comfortable talking to some of our younger kids on the way in is like, hey, you have an opportunity here, unlike a lot of other schools, because they're relying on juniors and seniors to build their roster. Like you can come in as a freshman or sophomore and compete for playing time right away. And I
Yep.
think it's a really good, I think it's a really good kind of time in your career to start to do that because after really U16 hockey, the rest of your hockey career is all going to be spent in a large age group, right?
Yep.
Junior hockey is a big age group. College hockey is a huge age group now. If you're lucky enough to go play professional hockey, that's a massive age group. So it's a good way to kind of test, just like it's a good way to test living away from home for the first time with some bumpers in place, how you can kind of fare um, in that environment. So I've always looked at it as like a huge opportunity for us to go get some younger players that we wouldn't have, they might be looking at some of the more premier hockey focused schools. And then also like back to what I was saying at the beginning, like the team culture piece is so much, you always have to have an eye towards it as a coach. And I think if you have kids who are with you for 3 and 4 years, there's a lot of that good stuff just naturally travels. Again, you have to make sure you're keeping an eye on it, but a lot of it just naturally travels with those kids because they're not in this like mercenary mindset of trying to find a new place every year or two.
Right. Yeah, I just had that. It's really like the conversation with one of my families who, in thinking about prep schools, is thinking about as you know, there's a few schools out there that have the model of like a U16, U18 team,
Right. Yeah.
right? And then talking to him about, well, like, okay, for you, what is the advantage of going and being really good, being the top, you can be on the top of their U16 team, or going to a place where
Right.
as a sophomore, like you're going to be playing at the essentially U19 level,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
and what does that do for your development? And it was really interesting, like talking to him and his dad of trying to get that like that the thought process around that had never occurred to them just because they'd been so locked into this youth hockey model of like, well,
Right, right,
we play U15, then we play U16, then we're going to play U18. And my
right,
point to them was like, well, but if, and this is the analogy I gave them, like, if in your organization you went to tryouts and they told you you were good enough to play for their U18 or U19 as a U16-year old, would you take that? And they were
yeah.
like, well, of course. Well, I'm like, well, this is what we're talking
This is
about
what we're
at
talking about. Right,
a
right, right,
place
right,
like St. Paul's, where like if you can go and play varsity hockey, even if you're not going to be on the top line as a ninth or tenth grader, you're going to be playing U19 hockey, like
right,
against
right,
really good players.
right, right, and practicing every day. Like you're getting all these reps in practice, and I think it's a huge. I think it's a huge. Again, it's a huge opportunity for us. I think as the CHL shift is a huge opportunity just in general for prep school hockey. I think it is going to get younger. Um, but I don't think it's a bad thing. Like I think it's going to be
No,
kind of like U18 and a half. It's not going to be down to
right.
U18, but you're going to have you're kind of going to have that traditional US kid that always is going to repeat and leave at 19. The only thing I talk to families about is like making sure that like I talked to a family yesterday actually like 2010 was going into ninth grade and they brought up the repeat thing. They're like, we're totally open if it helps us. And that's where I'm like, listen, I can't, I'm a firm believer, but it's not I repeated. I think it was the best thing I could have ever done. I remember sitting here on campus going into my senior year being like, there is no way I'm ready to be on a college campus right
I
now.
felt
Right.
the
Like,
same way. Yep.
and so I tell people that story and I'm like, for me, it was the best decision I could have ever made. And I also say that knowing full well, like I was going to school in a totally different time where even to go play Division 1 hockey, like playing junior hockey was kind of it was a little bit out of the ordinary for the New England
Yep.
market. So that was your junior hockey year in essence, right? Spending an extra year to develop physically. And um, I still am a huge believer in it. Um, but I always go back and I tell families like, go back and go, extrapolate forward, do the math, and make sure you have 2 years of junior hockey left to play. Just because junior hockey, whether you're looking at Division 3 or Division 1, I used to say it was a necessary evil. I don't even know if I can say it's a necessary evil at this
It's
point.
prerequisite now.
It's just part of the path if you want to play NCAA hockey. And I'm a big believer of like use hockey to get into the best school possible. I look at it as like an investment. If you can invest 2 more years and there's limited risk and your return is going to potentially triple, like, of course, you're going to leave your money in that investment. So I think leave your kid in that investment and leave yourself in that investment. So just back to the repeating thing, I'm a big proponent of repeat as long as you're still going to have 2 years of junior hockey. I think it's really hard if you're repeating to the point. We have two kids that are two of the captains I've referenced. Like they're only going to have 1 year of junior, and they're gonna be fine. They're great players.
Right.
They've got great grades. Like it's gonna work out for them, but it just is another kind of bump in the road they kind of got to overcome because now all of a sudden year 1 of junior hockey is like put up or shut up to a degree. You don't get that transition year. So
Right.
um, I think that's where kind of got off track on the repeating
No,
thing,
no,
but
no. Yeah, it's great.
that's where I kind of am always asking families like I shouldn't say asking, but more presenting families with like, here's my argument for repeating. Do the math on that. That being said, like it's a huge. I get the financial piece of it. You also have to be comfortable. Like the kid has to be okay with watching your friends from home graduate, and you're
Graduate. Yeah.
still going to chapel 4 days a week, and go to school some Saturdays, and like it's different, right? So as long as you're okay with that, I think it's the best thing that you could possibly like gift of time in this world is huge. Like no one I repeated, went to college, played 2 years in the minors. No one looked at my resume at my first job interview and was
Right.
like, "Why are you 26?"
Right.
Like
Yep.
they
Yeah.
forgot about, it, right?
Yeah, and I think it is now. It is so different, right? Than way different than when I went through. But like for, I do think there is so much more now of that conversation where I think even 3, 4, 5 years ago, I very much was in that idea of like, look, there's no downside to taking an extra year. Like if you're
Right.
asking my advice, I would tell you 9 times out of 10, particularly for boys, like I work with some girls too, and that's
Definitely.
a little
Yeah.
bit different.
Yeah.
For boys, like I don't see what the downside is. And now I do think that for with the families I work with, like there are some really valid arguments for some kids where I'm like, hey, I don't know that it makes as much sense for you to do that
Right.
anymore
Right.
as maybe it would have. And then there are still kids that, yeah, I think would really benefit from it. And I also think part of it for you guys is there is that real you that the real question around and some of this is a hockey piece, but also just from an admissions and readiness standpoint of like making sure that academically and socially, like, you're entering into a grade where you're most likely to find success at a place
A
like
hundred
St.
percent. Yeah.
Paul's. And
Yeah.
that can be a really different, you know, question than it is at some other schools because of
100%. Yeah.
like, yeah, you guys are, it is, the expectations are going to be different there.
Right. Yeah. I lean on that's a big thing where I think on the way in, like when that part of the repeat question comes up, I rely really heavily on the admissions team to kind of coach the family through that. Because for me, it's like I can give you all the thoughts in the world I have on the hockey side of things, but like as you know, like I we have to stay at such an arm's length in the admission and for good reason in the admissions process that like I'm just not armed with enough information about kind of what kids do well. And I know generally, but I don't
Right.
know like kind of looking at this school versus this school or these test scores or kind of I don't get to see the recommendations. So what are the recommendations saying about how this kid is in the classroom? Like I leave that very much in the admissions team's hands because they're just more prepared and able to answer that in a really honest fashion. That said, I totally agree with you. Like it's going to look different at St. Paul's than it is at Trinity Pong, right? Like
Yep.
when I was at Trinity Pong, we might jump at a kid and take him as a true 11th grader, where here you might be more suited in as a repeat 10. And that's
Right.
totally outside of what I think about the player as a hockey player.
Yeah. No, and I think, in my experience, like not only with your admission office, but obviously like your director of admission, her and I spent a lot of time
Yeah.
working together.
Yeah.
Like beyond also that piece, like I do believe you guys are in some ways like St. Paul's is so unique in a way in the sense of like it's 100% boarding, right? Like so
Yeah. Yeah.
everyone's
Yeah.
got a
Yeah.
board, right? So the makeup and the composition of your community it is different than it is even at other schools that are similar to
Totally.
your
Yeah.
size. And it isn't just the academic piece, like it is that community piece. Because I know, like, in speaking with you and speaking with Dana about, you know, there are numerous kids, but like having that conversation around, like, hey, the question isn't whether or not like hey academically we think he'd be okay here and from a
Right.
hockey
Right.
standpoint we think he can play a role but like in terms of the fit for our community we're not sure this is the right fit for
Right.
our community or I've also had other conversations where like hey great kid and great hockey player academically we're
Right.
less
Right.
sure about this and so I do think it is really interesting for you in the sense of like yeah, as a hockey coach, life would be really easy if like you could just go out and get, hey, these are all
Exactly.
great players
Yeah.
and I love them, but like that's not what your mission is. Like, and I say that
No.
not even as an obstacle, because like I know you choose to work there because like that's the job you like that's
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
you want. You
Yeah.
want to find those
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah, I think like as I try to navigate that, a couple of thoughts like pop into mind. Like one, again, I'm always trying to look at like what are the advantages of it. Like the fully residential piece opens up markets that we wouldn't be able to go tap into at some of the other places because the beauty of the fully residential school is like when you don't have day students leaving for the weekend and like if you're 20% day and each day student takes one of their friends home for the weekend. Before you know it, almost half the school's gone on a Saturday
Yep.
night. So if you're a plane ride away and you don't go home with a day student for the weekend, you're kind of left with your hands up in the air, right? So I'd be shocked if we had 10% of the student body home on a given weekend most of the
Right.
time. So the community life here on a Saturday night is really vibrant. It's great. And And so that's helpful. Like we've got a good pocket of kids from Nova Scotia. We've got a good pocket of kids from Colorado. When I showed up, we don't have any right now, but we had a pretty good group from California. Like those are places that sure you have one-off kids at other schools, but I think that when you're talking to a family from Colorado and you've got to take you got to connect in Chicago to get here and then take the bus up from Boston, like you're gonna go home for like
Right,
Thanksgiving break, Christmas break, and March break. And the rest of
right.
it, like the expectation is you're at a boarding school. And I think families are just a lot more comfortable sending their kids that far away when they know everyone's going to be there and the school's going to support that. And that's a big piece of it. So I've always looked at that as an advantage of like, sure, maybe we don't do as well in the Boston area as other schools do, but we just identified different pockets of unique kids. And then, um, I think the other thing like that I always talk about when this question comes up of like just the like kind of who fits into the community at St. Paul's, like I think you see this in a lot of schools, but we just have so many different we have an orchestra, we have a great football team, we have a ballet company, we have all these other programs that attract kids. We have the Classical Honor Society that's for like with Greek and Latin scholars. So you're not just surrounded by other really intelligent and really like-minded kids in the classroom. You're going to be sitting in class next to a bunch of kids who are really passionate about, they're really smart, they do an exceptional job at school, but they're really passionate about something else extracurricularly. And
Right.
so that if you're going to be inspired by that and you don't need to be sitting next to like it doesn't need to be like just the hockey player, football player, lacrosse player sitting next to you. If you're going to be inspired by these kids who play the cello like I've never heard. Like, which is the same thing as hockey. It's just
Yeah.
their version of hockey, right? Um, that's a those are the kinds of kids we're looking for. And then I was talking to a family the other day about this. Like, I think the Division 1 hockey player is like you're gonna get lucky and have a couple of Division 1 hockey players along the way, especially as we get younger, I think. Um, but look, I'm just trying to build a team full of kids who are going to be like super fired up when Middlebury and Williams and Amherst call because
Yeah.
it's it's exceptional hockey and it's the same kind of kids that like they're looking for those type of kids, the same type of kids we are. Like these kids who are going to be really involved in the community. They're terrific athletes. They're terrific students. Like there's not one thing that necessarily they identify with. Um, and so I look at that, like Danny and I talk about that all the time. Like if we could just build three lines and 5D and two goalies who are all going to end up in the nest cap, like watch out, we're going to have a really good hockey team.
For sure.
And Dana's going to be really excited about that too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think the other thing too, and I battled this like when I coach, but it's still true now. Like kids and families, one have no idea how good Division 3 hockey
Oh
is,
no, yeah,
and it's about to get a
it's about to
lot
get
better.
even. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like, and so like that, yeah, I think sometimes I agree with you that there's, and we get it, right? Like on the admission side, on the coaching side, there is this, I get, yeah, I don't want to say maybe it is. There's somewhat of this reluctance to say like, well, hey, like those are the guys I want. I want those guys, right? Versus like,
Right,
well, I'm
right,
going after guys who are going to play at BU or BC,
right,
right?
right.
Like, but I think that like, yeah, one, like if you had 12 to 15 guys who are all good enough to play at that level, like you've got a really good,
You got a
you got
really
a
good
team that
team.
would
Yeah,
win not just the you know, prep hockey, you'd win the USA national championships, like
right,
in
right,
at the
right.
U18 level.
Yeah.
But I think you're right because I would imagine, and I had this experience somewhat coming out of Taft, like in my own life, like um, kids who are going, as you said, like the kid who's going to embrace the environment of St. Paul's and wants to be there and throws themselves into every aspect of life. When they're graduating, there is going to be so much about that experience at a NESCAC school or at the
Hmm.
Division 3 level that is going to feel like not only familiar but like what they want versus Division
Hmm.
One. Like I've said this before, like, and you experienced it too. It's, you know, Division One hockey is it is a different animal. Like now
Right. It's a job.
it's a job, and so the opportunities to experience all of the other great things. Like my wife and I went to the same college, and like her experience and my experience, like we are unrelatable in terms of
Right.
like
Right. Right. Right.
what
Right.
she experienced at the school and what I experienced at the school.
Right.
And so I do think that for a lot of kids there is that idea of like, well, what do I what do I want to get out of the next educational experience I'm having, not just what's the best level of hockey I would be
Right.
capable of playing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where like we're seeing, I think you and I watched your, I think I watched your version of this with Tim Johnson. I think you guys were talking about this a little bit too. Like we're seeing more and more kids who, I think a lot of it comes from the junior hockey thing, and they're just they don't want to do they want to go right to school. Um, and then the other piece is it's just so like you said, Division three hockey is really, really good.
Yeah.
It's exceptional hockey. Um, and so we're seeing those two things combined with the fact that at my other job here is college advising for whatever reason, like a lot of kids are really excited about going down south to the big like football schools. So
Yep.
we're starting to see and I talked to some of the other coaches in our league, and they're saying the same thing. Like some of these guys are like, no, if I get into UNC, which is a terrific school, or UVA, another terrific school, like
Yeah.
I think I'm just going to go play club hockey. And so we have trying to think of since I've been here, we have a kid at UNC playing, a kid at NC State playing, a kid at Wake Forest playing, and a kid at UVA playing. And they
Yep.
all absolutely love it. And these places like UNC is building this brand new arena that's going to rival like any Division three arena
And
up
draw bigger
here. They're
crowds.
gonna
Like,
they're gonna pack it. Like you
yeah,
start playing hockey at the end of September. So there's an argument to be made. Like I could see part of the I could see that like club hockey world becoming even it's almost gonna be like what Division three was like, in the 90s, I think.
for
Like
sure.
before everything kind of blew up with this junior stuff. Um that's I think that's a very realistic route. And it's something that like we talk about with our kids, not as a group, but very individually. Like that's a question I try to ask every one of my seniors. It's like, in the fall when we meet, it's like, what do you want out of this? Like, because if it's NCAA hockey, then let's almost forget about it right now. If
Right.
something comes up, great, but let's not set the expectation it's going to. Let's just work towards junior hockey this year. Um, and then by the way, do you have any interest in doing club hockey? Because if that's the case, then it's a whole different process, and then it's even less. They're even less impactful on the admission side most of the times than like we are. So it's much more of just a straight up college process, and then see what shakes out in March and April. But it's definitely somewhere we're seeing a few more kids every year. I think take an interest in.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because, like you, as you said, in some ways, right? Like you, just like a number of other prep hockey like programs, the guys you've got as sophomores, juniors, like who are Division One guys. Like in some ways,
Yeah,
like those are
yeah,
easy, right? Like
right.
okay,
Yes,
hey, we can
yeah,
see, and like we're talking to five schools about him at the end of
yeah,
his junior year, and he's going to have options. And I think part of what I talked to even Tim about, like for those kids, I think the real value of prep school is like it forces them to evaluate whether or not they want to have that experience at the
exactly,
Division One level,
exactly.
right?
Yeah,
Because you've been allowed or forced to do so much of prep school. Now it is, I would imagine for you as the coach, the conversation around like, okay, are you sure you want to do that? Because if you
yeah,
go, this is going to be your job, and you're capable and great, and you're going to have
yeah,
those options. It really is that conversation. I think you're right for that group of kids who you're like, hey, maybe 2 years from now maybe you're gonna be a Division One hockey player after this,
right,
X number of steps. Maybe a year from now but like what is the experience that you really want to have in
right,
college
right.
versus like, and I think that's to me in some ways what I talk to families a lot about, like the value of the boarding school experience. You mentioned like it gives kids time back. It gives them the
Yes,
opportunity to
yeah,
do other things. But I think it also does, it forces them to, which they haven't ever, for a lot of them, had to do, like question why are you doing this? Like it's for them
100%.
in
Yeah.
youth
Yeah. Yeah.
hockey, it's always been like, well, I'm going to play for the highest level double A or triple A team so I can make the next double A or triple A team so I can go to this. And
Right.
then I think they get to places like St. Paul's and it's people like you tell them like, hey, catch your breath and let's talk about like why are you
Right.
doing this?
Right.
Why do you want to
100%.
play?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
I think it's a really, I think it's a huge, um, I think it's a huge kind of, I wouldn't say it's a turning point, but I think it's a really important kind of like reflective point in their life where, not to get too philosophical, but I gotta remember being in that at that point, and I was lucky. I was one of those guys that like in all my conversations with my coach and my advisor, like we had like it was pretty clear like I was going to end up at a
right, a
Division
Division One
One. It'd be like
opportunity.
my
Yep.
like Division 3, like the NESCAC, where I ended up transferring to Colby, but after Brown, but like that was kind of my floor. So it wasn't. I remember it being this weird, like I knew that's exactly what I wanted to do. I was like, I was very driven in hockey. Like it was just my next step. Kind of like you're talking about, like you go from
Yeah.
one AAA program to the next. Um, but I look, we have kids like that on our team, and then we have other kids who like I give them a lot of credit because our like my generation didn't do a good job of this. I think my generation just and there's right and wrong with each, but I think my generation bought into and it was easier because there wasn't the junior hockey thing, but they bought in more to like I'm going to use it to get into the best school possible. And for most of my teammates, that meant like I'm going to use it to go right to Bowdoin, or I'm going to use it to go right to Colby. I'm going to use it to go right to Trinity, which are
Right.
terrific
Great
schools.
schools.
Um, but there wasn't that. I don't feel as though there was this culture of kind of thinking about, well, if you can get into Colby, like you can probably get into UNC,
Right.
or you can probably get into UVA, and like you've already had this small school experience. Like, do you want to go to a bigger school? And that's the questions that the kids are asking them of themselves now. And I give them a ton of credit. And it's not that it's easy. I remember talking to one of our kids who graduated in 2024. He came back for graduation this year. He's the kid at Wake Forest, and he was saying he's like, it was really hard to get over that like idea that I wasn't going to play NCAA hockey if I didn't do junior hockey. But reflecting back 12 months later, he's like, I'm having a blast. I'm playing a ton at Wake. Like I'm doing exactly what I want to academically. It's the right size for me socially. So those are the really important kind of like turning points I think that happen along the way when you're in an environment like we talked about. Like you have that extra year, you can kind of like slow down. You can you're constantly being asked in a classroom to analyze these like big questions of like who am I? Um, and I think that goes, it doesn't only help in humanities class, it helps in like your life decisions. And it's the first big life decision most kids are going to have to make.
Yeah.
And, and it's really good of them to be asking these big questions, I think, and being able to answer them.
Yeah, it's why I wrestle with this idea of like, in the hockey path now, right? Like there is this argument and probably a really valid one around this idea of like, well, prep hockey is a really good developmental step
Hmm.
that provides you this wealth of other experiences that you don't have at any
Yeah.
other development step. And like, there's no doubt that part of that is true. Um, what I struggle with sometimes is this idea of like what is implied in that idea is that, well, it means you have to now get to the next highest level when like
Right.
the
Right.
reality is like, yeah, like this is like prep hockey in itself is a really high level of hockey. Like there's not many kids who are going to be able
Hmm.
to play varsity
Hmm.
prep hockey at a place like St. Paul's. And if you get there, I think to your point, not I would love to get to a point where kids don't feel like as that example you said, like, well, somehow I haven't attained a goal because I'm not playing Division 1 or Division 3 hockey,
Right.
or the
Right. Right.
feeling of
Right.
like, hey, I'm not sure I want to go play 2 years of junior hockey right now
Yeah.
because I want to go to UVA, and not feeling like, well, I've played my hockey my whole life, so like I kind of have to chase this thing. Like I do think you're right. Like I think schools and the experience and maybe kids are more savvy now than certainly I was to the idea
Hmm.
of like, yeah, it should be like I think the value to me of prep schools, and I do try to talk a lot about this about my parents is like, or to my families is like, no doubt if you go to St. Paul's and you do well academically and you're a really good hockey player, like you're gonna have limitless options coming out of there.
Right.
Um, that's great. But the reason you should go to St. Paul's is because of the experience you're gonna have at St. Paul's.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like that to me
The
is
Go
yeah,
ahead. Sorry.
different.
Yeah. I look at like our role like on the hot like it's just what I was saying before. Like when I remember getting to Brown, I remember the first night of my freshman year at Brown, and I like walked out of my dorm in the quad, and I'm like, there's no one around. I'm on my way to like meet some of the hockey guys, and it was kind of it was a really eerie feeling. I was like, I don't have to check in with my dorm parents tonight. I could be in whenever
Yeah.
I want. Which in one sense might like make some parents feel nervous, but it was like this like kind of calming feeling of like, oh, I don't have to do this, but I got this. Like I've already done this for 3 years. So there's the I think all these boarding schools do such a terrific job of providing that the academic, the social, the residential life component that mimics what you're going to see at the college level. So you go there and you have that feel. On the hockey side of things, all I'm trying to do is like create an environment within the confines of what we're allowed to do in the NEPSAC, like that mimics like what you're going to see at the junior hockey level and what you're going to see at the college hockey level, so that like you were saying, like if that's not like you can find out if that's not what you want to do because there's another like no matter how
Yep.
hard I tried, there's another level above that of like professionalism of like all encompassing of this is all you're gonna do. And and then the other thing is like to try to give these kids the experience of like walking into the rink on the first day of training camp in the USHL or in the North American League or in the NCDC or in the EHL or somewhere up in Canada, or if you're lucky enough to go play college hockey right away, like to walk in and be like, oh no, I got this.
Yeah, I'm ready.
And it's not this like so I've kind of looked at our I think our role is as like in the hockey world has started to change. Of like when I was here, it was a bona fide like the Avon team we played against. Like and all my teammates, like other than two of us at St. Paul's, like we all literally like left St. Paul's and were on opening night rosters all over, in the NESCAC hockey's
I go
ECAC
back a
right away.
generation where like we had 9 guys who graduated from my tech team at Taft that all went directly to Division I schools and played. Like
Yeah,
so,
and then I look at that Avon team, and you've got like
yeah.
Lee Boffey was there, Danny New was there, Cam Atkinson was there. Like they're not just on opening night rosters; they're playing like 20 minutes a night
I
as
have
freshmen.
nightmares about coaching against that team when I was at
So
Bird like
it's changed in that sense of like our job is not to prepare you to and place you in college hockey
right.
right away. Our job is to prepare you for really our job is to prepare you from strictly from a hockey lens, like to prepare you to go if we're looking at our like highest achieving players, like to go achieve the same level in junior hockey. So we've just kind
Yep.
of I think it's I wouldn't even say we've shifted down. I just think that the landscape has changed so much that junior hockey has there's they've kind of like supplanted themselves in between high school like prep school and college hockey. So our job is not to like create a way to bypass this. It's to create a way to like you to funnel into that and be really successful right away. Or you to find out, and I don't mean this in like fall out of love of hockey, but just figure out like, no, I've loved my hockey experience here, and I'm gonna take the lessons I learned and I'm gonna be a great coach to my kids one day. Or
Yep.
I'm gonna go be a great teammate on the, at UVA or at Wake Forest. Or like I'm gonna take the lessons that Coach Murphy and Coach Harff taught me like about the team culture piece, and I'm gonna apply it to my baseball team in college because we have those guys too, like and the lacrosse players. So like it just is. I kind of got off track, but
No, it's great.
I think it's just a different. It's just different than when you and I were in school. Of like it was this bona fide like feeder to college hockey. It's still a bona fide feeder to college hockey, but it's just a longer route between this and college hockey.
Yeah, and I think that like part of where as good as the league is right now and as good as it gets, and I agree with you, I think that prep hockey is going to as good as it is now. I think 3, 5 years from now, prep hockey is going to be at an even higher level because
I
I think
totally agree with you. Yeah.
um but the re, I tell parents this all the time, like it's not prep schools like prep schools would love to go back to the day of like go to Brown, go to Colt. Like,
100%. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not, it's, college hockey coaches figured out at some point after I graduated and around the time you graduated that, like, hey, if you're good enough to play for us at 18 or 19, like, you're probably going to make more of an impact at 21. And if no one's
Right.
telling me I've got to take you at 18 or 19,
Right.
why would I do it
Exactly. Exactly.
unless you're going to be a guy who well, after 18, you're going to be a first round draft pick and you're going to the NHL. Like, unless you're
Exactly.
that guy,
Yeah.
there's no reason for them to play you
No.
at
No.
19. And so, I think it is inevitable that like, yeah, I tell parents that all the time. Like, it's not for lack of talent. It's not for lack of ability. It's not for lack of desire of the schools to
Right. Right.
send you to Yale. It's, the coaches at Brown are going to go to you and say, hey, like that kid's great. We want him, go send him to Dubuque for 2 years and then have him go play in, Sarnia for a year, and then we'll take
Right.
him because
And then we'll take him. Exactly. Yeah.
so it's not it's yeah, I mean it's just inevitable. So
Yeah.
the I got one last question because I know we're getting up
Yeah.
against
Yeah.
time here that like all of my families in this vastly changing landscape want to know is like, so what's like for you guys now, what are you doing for
Yeah.
your fall hockey program?
So we're before I get to that, I have one
Sure,
thought. Like
go
the
for it.
just on what we were just talking about. So I think in my experience in the last as I've seen it change over the last 10 years, the two groups of kids, and this is an overgeneralization, but the two groups of kids who do exceptionally well, and I'm looking more on like a hockey lens here. So let's assume you've got all the
Yep,
intangibles that you're going to get into the school. The two kids who do well are the kid, like we've got a kid who's coming in. He's a Canadian kid. He's visited, he's had some ECAC contact. He's visited ECAC schools already. He's not committed though. He's coming in with the strict goal of like, I'm coming here and then I'm going to go play major junior after.
right.
And then I'm going to go to college.
Yep.
So like, and I'm a big
Which
believer
sounds
of like
crazy,
you,
by the way.
which
Just
sounds
like the
crazy, but it's
yeah.
like, it's the world we're in. And I'm a
Yep.
big believer of like do I want to like setting your goals in like they should be aspirational but they should be attainable to a
Yep.
degree. So like I can't sit there and say like every year like I need to go win a like an Elite Eight New England championship because like maybe one day I will, but like this year's team like we're not built like Avon, Kimball Union, and Holderness are going to be like
Right.
one game at a time. Can we knock like we beat Dexter and we tied KWA last year? Like we can compete with them, but like over the course of a season, like I'm setting my kids up for failure if I say
Yeah.
like I think our goal should be like let's go win a large school championship. That's
Yep.
right. So you're talking about the attainable goal, and then the other group of kids that do really well are the kids who come here and it's exactly what you said. Like it's not that prep school hockey is the end all be all, but they respect that it's a really, really high level. And they kind of have this laissez faire. They're working hard in the classroom, they're working hard on the ice, but it's almost a laissez faire approach of like, I'm just going to see what happens and I'm going
Right.
to go through a real college process. And if I get into my dream school, I'm going to go to my dream school and I'm going to be happy that I got to play at St. Paul's or I got to play at Holderness or like wherever.
Yeah.
Those are the two the kids who, and this is where it's different than when you and I were here. The kids who come in and are like, I'm doing this so I can play college hockey. It just is it's just a hard environment to exist in because it's such a long time period between you graduating and you ending up in college hockey. So those are just
Well, and
the
I
two
think
kids who I think do really well here.
and part of that is also I think why I love like St. Paul's and schools like it, right?
Yeah.
Because like you guys want those, you want that I don't have a better word to say than dichotomy or duality of
Yes.
like
Yeah.
those
Yeah. Yeah.
kids, right? Um, that's what makes it attractive and that's what makes the school interesting. And you have those kids who are going to look at it and go, oh my God, I got into Princeton they're
Right.
telling me I'm probably not going to make the hockey team there, but like I can go to Princeton, like so I'm going to
Right.
go,
Right. Right. Right.
right?
Right.
Or I
Right.
can go to Middlebury, and maybe I'm going to play club hop, but I'm going to do that. And you're also going to have those, like you said, that kid you're talking about, he's going to get committed at the end of his junior year, and like
Right.
he's going to be a high draft pick in the OHL or Quebec Major
Right.
Junior Draft, and like you guys are going to be having the conversation with mom and dad that I used to have with families about the USHL of like,
Right.
here's why you should maybe stay a year, or here's why it's time for you to go because you're better than
Right.
this
Right.
level right now,
Right.
right? And
Right.
like that's really interesting, and I think there, as you know, not in a positive or negative way, there are schools where like that's not the culture or community of their hockey team, right? Like it is going to be something really different. And like for some kids, that's the exact environment they need to be in. Like that's not what you guys are looking for, like
Right.
in your
Right. Right.
kids, right? Like
Yeah, I
it's a
think
really
I think
different
you
thing.
said it. I think you said it perfectly. Like that dichotomy of kids, it makes both kids better. And the kids
Right.
who are stuck in the middle of like they are because we have plenty of kids who like that their goal is to come here to play college hockey, and it's not that they're doing poorly. It just is you can see that added level of stress that they have on their
Yep.
plate, and that dichotomy really helps kind of pull those kids in one direction or the other. So it's a boring world if we all think exactly the same, right? Like you need those different viewpoints.
Well, you're not
Um,
St. Paul's. Like that's like that. I think that's
exactly.
right. Like you're not St. Paul's if you are that. So,
Right. So the fall hockey thing. So we started. So we play in the fall prep league
oh, great.
down in Salem. So all of our returning guys, and then we try to keep a smaller team than like the varsity team will be. So I'd say most of the guys that we anticipate will be varsity level contributors. Um, they get picked up by the coaching staff that runs that. And then if we have extra guys that are, JV guys that haven't made the varsity team yet, or guys who, we're not sure about on the varsity side, like they'll actually play on some age-based fall prep league teams.
Would
Or
you?
they want, if they want to play on a traditional split season team, we've had a couple guys do that too. Like I don't believe in like it's outside of school, so I can't sit there and mandate what you do. Um, but the nice thing is like we've had every year, we've had a couple, there's injuries and stuff, and we've had guys that played on the fall prep 16U league, just like on a kind of random grouping of kids on a team in there. And then like we have a couple injuries, and because they're in the league, like they'll come up and fill in on the Miller's team that plays in that, our guys. So it's great. We had like I think we play 33 games, including our like opening scrimmages this year. And that team will play between 15 and 20 games in the
Right. So you're
fall,
right
like
at that 50
start
game
Labor
mark.
Day. So you're at that like 50 game mark. Um, and then the the best part about it is that Peter Ferrio, who runs it, like his kids both went to, or all three of them went to Govs. Like, he stepped in and helped coach Exeter last year. He's such a believer in the prep school model that, we're never getting pressured to play on a Friday night. Like there's no Friday
Right.
night games. There's no Saturday morning games unless you don't have Saturday class. So our guys, because most Saturdays we're gonna have class, like our guys play Saturday afternoon. They might play two games on Sunday, but most of the time it's just one game on Sunday. Um, we've got it down to like a science where we've actually got a bus that's a charter bus that's built into the cost for the families, and it still comes under. It's I don't even know if it gets to 2 grand yet.
Yep.
So it's
That's
pretty
awesome.
affordable. Um, and the bus picks the kids up at the rink, just like it would for a regular hockey game. The only difference is like Danny and I
You're
don't get
not
to
on the
go
bus.
coach.
Right.
So they bring him down there. It's like 40 minutes from campus, and then bring him back. And it's been great. I think the team camaraderie piece is huge. I'm a big believer of like our this generation of kids needs a lot of they still need the same direction all kids need, but they need a lot more. They ask a lot more why questions. They want to be involved. They need ownership. Um, so our captains know our systems. We had
Yep.
team meetings in the spring, and they picked our defensive zone system, and they've drawn it out. And so they're like my little coaches out there. So they're helping lead not only from like the team dynamic side of things, but you know
That's great.
They're
If you
working
give
on
up goals,
face-off
you can
routes.
blame them too, which instead of them blaming
Exactly,
you.
exactly. I don't know if that'll work yet. But so they take a lot of ownership on that side of things, and so there's a team camaraderie piece, the leadership and team chemistry piece, and then it's a huge back to our discussion of like you're playing U19 hockey for our young guys. I've noticed they're able to jump in faster
Right.
in November when we start because they've already been playing against 19-year-olds. Because the rest of the league is like Kimball Union's in the league, New Hampton's in the league, Exeter, Govs, Brooks joined the league this year. I'm probably
Tilton,
forgetting
right? Was
someone.
it or Tilton had their own thing
No,
last year.
Tilton does their own thing. So you've got us six. I'm probably forgetting someone. And then like in October, there's another league that just started out west. So Salisbury's in that league, Gunnery, I think Taft, Westy, they're all going to come out for like a jamboree in the first weekend in October. So you're playing prep school hockey all year
And
long.
a
Like
ton,
the
like
only,
for college coaches, like that level of player playing game on Sundays is like an awesome chance for them to be able to
yes,
get to
yeah,
see kids early prior to your season too, which
exactly.
like is awesome. Do you have any
Yeah,
guys who are going to
yeah.
play a fall sport?
So we have so if you're a freshman, you have to do some sort of team activity. So we'll have like I know of
I
one
love that
freshman
rule, by the way.
who I'm imagine who I anticipate making our team. Like he's always played soccer, so he's gonna play, like I think he'll be on our varsity soccer team too. And then one of our goalies, he's one of our assistant captains. He's always played soccer, so he'll be a
Yep.
full year varsity soccer player. Um, that's it for this year. Last year we had two other guys playing soccer. Um, and then the juniors and the sophomores, juniors, and seniors, they actually work out with our strength and conditioning coach as their
And
sport in
do
the
the fall
fall.
hockey. Yeah.
And then I'm a big believer, like once we get to the spring, I want to take a huge step back. I think you got to be a kid. I think you got to talk back to the community piece. You've got to go kind of give back to our community. So most kids, it comes pretty natural. Like we've got a lot of really high level lacrosse players. We've got a lot of good baseball players. A couple of guys are really good golfers that play golf for me. And then if they've never, because you run into this with the hockey kids, like they've never played another sport. Um, I sit there and meet with them and try to encourage them to get
Right.
out. So I'm really proud. Like we only had two guys who didn't play last year, three guys, excuse me, who didn't play a spring sport last year. One of them was recovering from shoulder surgery, so he wasn't able to play. And then one of them does like a lot of sports media stuff, so he's out
Oh,
doing
cool.
that stuff anyways. And then the other kid, like he's the one guy that never played a sport that I couldn't get to. So
Right.
I encourage our guys to play other sports. Like it's, on the admission side of things, if I can go there and say, to my admissions team, I've got this really good hockey player that I love. He also wants to play lacrosse and he's played varsity lacrosse before, or he's played club lacrosse, or he's going to, he wants to, maybe he's never run track, but he's a great athlete and he wants to run track. That makes my job a lot easier because
For
we're a
sure.
small school and we got to support lots of things. So if you can tick two boxes, it's helpful. Um, so yeah, the fall sport thing is becoming less and less of a thing just
Yeah.
because the fall hockey is a thing. But if you want to do it, like we've got kids every year I've been here that have done it. 2 years ago we had a kid who played football. And I'm like,
Wow.
that's old school.
That is
Football,
old school.
hockey,
Yep.
lacrosse. He plays
Yep.
lacrosse at Trinity now. Like he's an old school athlete, but he was like, and it wasn't like he just kind of stood in the sidelines and football was the back end of our bench in hockey and was a star lacrosse player. Like he was good in all three sports. So
Yeah, that's another. I tell families this too. Like I played to tell you, like I was a real dinosaur, right? I captained the soccer, hockey, and lacrosse team at
there you
Taft.
go.
And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
hold true to the fact of like I will probably be the last person ever to do that. And it's not
Oh
because I'm
yeah.
good athlete. It's just because none of these other kids are better athletes are going to try it. Um, but the reality, again, I go back to that idea of like the reason I feel like that's changed so much isn't because like you don't want kids playing soccer
No,
or
no.
football or schools don't. It's for again for that group of kids you have whose like aspiration is going to be to play college hockey, whether it's at the Division 1 or the
Hmm.
Division 3 level. You know this, like those college coaches, from Middlebury or from Maine or from wherever are calling you saying like, "Hey, I'm coming down to the fall hockey game," and like, why isn't he playing? Like,
Right,
where is
right, right,
this
right,
kid?
right,
And like,
right.
they want to see him before you guys get to your Christmas tournament. And so like, I wish kids didn't like feel that, but I know the reality of it is like that is kind of where we are. Like
Yeah.
fall
Yeah.
hockey is a critical component of it, and for a lot of families, like yeah, knowing it's there is going to be one of the reasons why they're gonna look at
Totally.
prep
Yeah.
school.
Yeah. And then we like on campus, like our ice goes down pretty early. Like I think it's the 21st of September this year. So like as
Oh
soon as the
wow.
ice is down, we're on. We're able to get on and do the small group skill sessions. We'll bring in skills coaches that can work with the whole group. So it's um, you you get a lot of hockey in the fall. Well, certainly more than I could ever dream of when I was here. We had
Yeah,
like I think the ice went down a month or a week before tryouts, and you were lucky to get on twice.
that's what it was. Even but like it's crazy. So yeah, because I mean I was coaching, was coaching at Berkshire starting 03 or 04. And like yeah, our kids were not allowed to touch the ice. It was like hard
Yeah,
rule of like the Sunday before tryouts is when they could get on the
yeah,
ice.
yeah,
That's what it
yeah,
was. So,
yeah,
um, hey man, thank you so much. This is
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. Of course, it was fun.
We'll talk again soon, and I'm sure we'll bump into
Yeah,
each other maybe before the school year starts again.
yeah. Have fun at Brown.
Yeah, all right, we'll talk again. See you,
All right,
man.
talk soon.